Hello, everyone, and welcome to our next episode. Today we are joined by Rick. Thanks, Rick, for coming on. Rick Tumlinson. He is considered to be one of the best evangelists in the space field and is listed as one of the top 100 influential people in this field. As a result of his world-changing work, Rick, in 2015 you won the World Technology Award. Along with Craig Venter of the Human Genome Project. You consult with NASA and Space Force. You founded SpaceFund, venture capital company, which we're going to discuss in detail during today's episodes. And you also founded several nonprofit organizations, the EarthLight Foundation and the Space Frontier Foundation, which has been already active for over 33 years, I guess.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so that's quite a long time. We're going to discuss that as well. The EarthLight Foundation also is creating inclusive movement to use space to protect the Earth and expand life into the cosmos.
Yes.
Yes.
Very well said.
So obviously people that attended the International Space Convention, Rick, they had a chance to see your presentation yesterday, right? But it was more towards discussing the space industry, where it's headed, right? The situation in the industry and how the new space entrepreneurs tie into that. Today, I would like to discuss with you more about the SpaceFund, right?
Okay.
But before we get into that, you are also the co-founder of the Deep Space Industries that you founded in 2013, right? Co-founded.
Correct, yes.
Yes. So when it got acquired by Bradford Space in 2019, so this is quite a fast exit. I mean, for a space company, can be considered 6 years. So can you share more about like DSI? What were the projects that the company was working on?
So the way this happened was in 2012. My friend Peter Diamandis and his team founded Planetary Resources, and at the same time, it was funny because I was working on a book that I was going to do about asteroids, and I saw what was happening with them. We were both thinking about asteroids, but he jumped in to start this other company. And I realized, this might be the time. And so we formed Deep Space Industries. And we both companies dove in pretty heavily. We worked with Luxembourg. And they were wonderful. But the challenge was that we were too early. It's an interesting thing in that I think we were correct. We were just a little too fast. And I've had that happen a couple of times with me. I get there a little too early. And so while we were developing the company, we started looking at different projects we could do because the asteroid resource market wasn't going to happen for maybe 10, 15 years.
Considered science fiction back then, right?
Yes. And so we decided to look at different projects. We went through many different projects that we were thinking about doing. We were looking at orbital debris at one point, all kinds of different things. And finally, we decided that the best way to prepare for what we were going to do, in other words, sending a probe to an asteroid, was to focus on some part of the probe that might also be able to be sold to other companies. So we focused in on the motor, the thrusters. And, the thrusters, not the motor.
Yes.
Let me clarify that. So the motor is what pushes the spacecraft. The thrusters are the little, whenever you're watching the TV, you see the
Trajectory connection. Correction.
Yes, right. And so we focused on that, and we decided to focus on those that could be propelled using water, because we believed that that was going to be the very first resource that we would be able to acquire in an asteroid. So we wanted to sort of begin to build the ecosystem, to build the industrial base for what was going to happen later. So we came up with the little thruster units, and we ended up selling several of them to a couple of companies. And then as that was happening, it became kind of clear that we were too early. And so I left the company, I forget, it was like 2016, 2017. I stuck around for 1 year.
So before the exit.
Before the exit, I stayed for 1 year to help transition, unpaid. And then Bradford bought the company. I think there's still a Deep Space Industries
Yes, there is.
in Luxembourg now.
Yeah.
And so they're doing well with it. Planetary Resources also got acquired. Yeah, it was a great experience. And what's interesting is now that several members of the team have gone off to start other companies. Daniel Faber, who was our CEO, has OrbitFab, and they're doing the gas stations in space. Grant Bonin, who was our chief engineer, he has another company now. Sagi Kafir, who was our legal counsel, was the chief legal counsel for Blue Origin for a while. So it was a great team.
Great team.
Yeah,
Just
great
too
team.
early, as you mentioned.
Too early. And I've been playing recently with the idea of maybe pulling a team together and talking
To reunite.
to get the band back together, part of it. Because now I don't think it's too early anymore. If you look at the time it would take from zero to delivering products in space, propellant for water, let's say 10 years total, for very first, right? Not full up operations. And you look at what's happening with Starship, Blue Origin, and the others. I think that, yeah, in about 10 years, the market will be there, for sure. Actually, there'll be a market before then, but you have to develop the infrastructure. It's a very complicated thing. You know, it's not as simple as some people think. The reason, for example, that we chose water is, number one, it's so vital. You know, if you have water, you have air, you have propellant, you can make shielding with it, you can do all kinds of things once you have it. If you add a little carbon, then you can make plastic, right? Things like that. But the other point is that it's easier to extract. You know, you hear these stories about the platinum asteroids. That's very, very, I'm not using this as a joke, but it's a very hard thing to do. And, you know, also robotics, very challenging. AI, very challenging. On the other hand, water, if it's in the form of ice or loosely in a compound, you heat it up, you capture the steam, and then you have everything.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So that's kind of where we were zoned in at.
So in terms of bringing the team together, so that's like an idea still, right?
Kind of played with it already a little bit.
So they were, or are they going to find
I can't
out
get
through this
to,
episode?
played with it. It's we're kind of waiting right now. Everybody's having fun, making money, doing other things. We have a project in mind that would be fairly mind-blowing because we're trying to crack the equation of how do you get into mining space resources and harvesting them and yet produce income early and revenue. That's challenging. We think we found a way to do it, but we're waiting. Unless somebody wants to give us $10 million to get started, then we'll keep waiting.
Just because the timelines are quite long for such missions.
It is to a degree, yeah. But again, we figured out a way that we could produce probably 5 times revenue in 5 years.
Yeah, so that's good.
Yeah, for the first
Viable.
First mission, if successful. Worst case, second mission, which would make it like 6 or 7 years, because we're trapped by some cycles. I can't say more because it starts to give away what we were thinking about doing.
Confidential is confidential.
Yeah, but it's out there, and I think that when you're dealing with these sort of space projects, you have to look at them. You have to get out of your narrow way of looking at something and figure out an angle that nobody's thought of. You know, and it's like one of the when you hear that somebody's come up with a new device and it's so obvious. I wish I'd thought of that. Somebody's going to come up with that when it comes to the space resources. We also believe too that it's going to be cheaper for asteroid resources than for the moon. It's if you do it right. depending on the asteroid you go to. That's the big question.
Makes sense. I'm sure the audience that's listening will be staying tuned, to learn more about what's going to happen following you, Rick.
Yeah.
Because you're also quite active on LinkedIn, right?
A little bit.
Yes. Well, a little bit more than I am, so.
Yeah, I realized recently, it was a few months ago, that LinkedIn was the way to talk to people in the industry. Until then, I didn't really do much on LinkedIn, and then I decided. I also sort of had a conversation with somebody, and they said I should post like every day if I can, and so I do it every day. I admit that I get a little tough on some of the government projects, but somebody should.
Yes.
And we have to hold their feet to the fire. It's. I get a little upset.
Constructional criticism is good.
Yeah, and I get a little upset with people because they become fans, right? And it's like being a fan. Fine, we need them. We need everybody to care about space. But those of us who are in the middle of it, we need to do something about it. And I was talking to somebody yesterday about it. If you look at every other cause, it doesn't matter what it is, the environment or whatever. Those causes in the U.S., there's always a group who is lobbying the government, and pushing, activist group that is telling the government, do this, don't do this. In space, we had that for a while with Space Frontier Foundation many years ago, but right now there really isn't any group